Chapter 10, and the final chapter of Tractate Pesachim, discusses some further laws of the holiday of Passover in regards to the actual laws and customs of the night of the holiday, in regards to aspects of the Seder, the Passover meal, and its related obligations. The first Mishnah says, on the eve of Passover, around the afternoon time of Mincha, you may not eat or drink until it gets dark. Every Jewish person, even the poorest man in Israel, must eat while reclining, as free men do. You drink 4 cups of wine, even if you're so poor that you require to be supported from the charity platter. The Gemara says it specifies this point about not eating until dark by Passover, even though it also applies by Shabbos and other holidays, to include the opinion that you actually can eat by those other times. It's specifically by Passover that you can't, as the matzah must be eaten with an appetite. Others say it's because there's slight variation in the timing by Passover as to when you have to stop eating. This is debated. This prohibition is against starting a meal during this period. Some say if you just continue your meal through this whole period, say by a Shabbos, and we say that when night falls, you then interrupt it by putting out a tablecloth, you say Kiddush, and then you resume eating. This is discussed. There's also argument if you said the Kiddush prayer, normally said over wine, at nightfall by the Shabbos meal in the synagogue. Some say you also need to say a blessing over the wine at home for your family, but you have fulfilled the Kiddush obligation. Others say you haven't even fulfilled the Kiddush obligation, and the reason it's said in the synagogue is for wayfarers who eat and sleep in the synagogue, and he holds that you have to say Kiddush where you eat. This is further discussed along with some related opinions. Some others do say it fulfills your Kiddush obligation and also covers for you making it at home, as he holds that a change of place does not require another blessing, but this is refuted based on a source. There are similar points qualified. There's also discussion in regards to the saying of the after blessings on this topic and some related points. This is discussed further. There's also debate about the sequence of the Havdalah prayer, which has a few blessings. In regards to the order of the blessing said, we say we follow the order of the wine blessing, the Kiddush blessing, the blessing on the flame, on the Havdalah service, and then Shehechianu last, if it's said. There's also discussion if we say the blessing over the fragrant spices before or after the flame. We say it's said before. There are related points in discussion on the order of these blessings. There are also points in the actual words of the Havdalah blessings which have been decided to be this. The exact precise text formatting is debated further. There's some additional discussion on the Kiddush and Havdalah prayers said by Shabbos. There are also points in regards to the timing. We cherish Shabbos by starting it early, by saying the Kiddush prayer on Friday night early, but we delay the Havdalah prayer on Shabbos night to delay the Shabbos' ending. There are some related points on this topic. There's further discussion on the blessings said by these ceremonies. Some say it's actually valid to say Kiddush over bread instead of wine. If you ate something prior to saying Kiddush or Havdalah, there's debate if you still say these prayers. We say you can still say the blessings, and if you didn't say the Kiddush prayer, you can say it at any time throughout Shabbos until Shabbos ends, and if you miss the Havdalah service, some versions say you can say it for the rest of the week, and some say you can say it only until and not including Sunday night. This is discussed. Some say you can say Kiddush over date beer, if that's the equivalent of wine in the region you're in, but some say we can't, and we also don't allow it by Havdalah. There are further points on these discussions. Okay, we said earlier we stop eating on the eve of Passover close to the afternoon Mincha period, but there are 2 Mincha periods, Mincha Gedola, noon, and Mincha Katana, about 3 p.m. So which is it referring to? It could be the earlier time where the Paschal offering is brought, as the concern could be if he's busy eating, he'll forget to bring the offering. Or it could be the later time, and the worry is that he'll be full that night and he won't eat the matzah properly. We bring a source that it's Mincha Katana and the second concern. Some say that during this period you can't eat proper foods, but you can dip and eat refreshments like vegetables. Some would drink wine all Passover Eve, so they'll be very hungry to eat the matzah. We bring a source that wine makes you hungry. Some would fast on Passover Eve, so that way they would want to eat the matzah. We then said we recline during the Passover meal, the Seder. This applies by the eating of the matzah, but not to the maror, the bitter herbs. There's debate by which cups of wine we lean by. Some say only by the first 2 cups, as the Haggadah, the collection of texts, quotes, and verses that's read at this Seder, the Passover meal, discusses the redemption from Egypt during the period where you drink those cups. Others say it's the last 2 cups you lean by, as it's celebrating the fact that we're free currently. It's ruled that we lean by all 4 cups of wine. The act of reclining does not mean lying on your back or leaning to your right side, as that's very dangerous, as the food could enter your windpipe if you're leaning like this and cause you to choke. So we lean to the left. A woman in the presence of her husband is not required to recline unless she is a prominent woman. A son must recline in the presence of his father. There's debate if a Torah student needs to recline before his teachers. A waiter needs to recline. Women need to drink the 4 cups of wine too, as they were involved in the miracle of the exodus from Egypt. Wine from those days was typically diluted, so the amount you need to drink is the amount mixed typically to make a cup of wine by the after blessing. You can drink the wine without dilution. If you drink them all straight in a row, that's fine. If some of the cups were drunk by your household, that's fine. Some say if you drink the wine undiluted, you fulfill the obligation to drink the 4 cups of wine, but not the obligation to act in a manner of freedom. Also, if you drink all the cups in a row, you fulfill the obligation to drink wine, but not the obligation of the 4 cups. You can share with your household as long as you drink most of the cup. The exact amount necessary is discussed. Some say it's a revi'is, which was an old form of measurement, and it should be red wine. Some say men, women, and children are obligated to drink the 4 cups of wine, but instead of giving it to children, we give them grain and nuts as snacks throughout the day, so that way they don't go to sleep, and so that way they ask questions. Some would also take away their kids' matzah, so that way they wouldn't eat too much and fall asleep, and similar notions are related. It also talks about the importance of gladdening your household on a holiday, and further precise measurements of what a revi'is is. The exact measurements are pretty complex, and are described in regards to these concepts like by a mikveh, an immersion pool, which must have 40 measurements and similar. It also says that there's no concern of drinking 4 cups of wine in regards to eating or drinking stuff in pairs, which shouldn't normally be done, as it makes you susceptible to demons and sorcerers. So, it says that the first night of Passover is a guarded night from any of such things. Others say that some of the cups technically combine, making 3 cups. Others say that it's considered 4 separate cups, as each is a mitzvah to itself. There are some further discussed points in regards to drinking cups or doing things in pairs or in even amounts, as a sage was told by a figure known as Yosef the demon that Ashmedai, the king of the demons, is appointed over all pairs, so it's dangerous to do things in pairs. Yosef the demon said that if you drink 2 cups intentionally or not, the demons can kill you. If it's 4, they won't kill you, but they'll only injure you, and only if it's intentional. If you accidentally consume something in pairs, you should hold your thumbs in either hand and say, you and I are 3, and if a voice says you and I are 4, he should say you and I are 5, and if it responds that you and I are 6, he should say you and I are 7, and someone once did this until they got to 101, and the demon burst. There are also some other quotes you should say listed here to ward off any sorceresses you meet, as told to a sage by the Madam of Sorceresses. It also says that demons will only harm you if you're particular about this whole pairs thing. If you just don't care, they won't bother you, but you should still be mindful. There are further points and qualifications on these concerns of pairs by such topics. It says the time a sorceress did sorcery on somebody, but they were careful to not eat things in pairs, so it had no effect. But once he got drunk and drank an even number of cups, so he was walking, and an Arab individual informed him that he was a dead person, and he touched a palm tree, which shriveled up, and he burst. Some say the concern of pairs does not apply to man-made foods, like cooked things, and not by a shop, not by a guest, not by a non-prominent woman, and similar points on this. There are also other things which expose you to harm of demons mentioned, relieving yourself between a palm tree and a wall if it's less than 4 cubits, as that's where demons pass and you're not giving them room. Passing between 2 palm trees if it's not a public thoroughfare, drinking borrowed water in a field if you are a minor, and passing over spilled water even if it was done by your wife, so long as there's no dirt spread on it, or if you didn't spit on it, and other qualifications. Some of these qualifications don't apply in a place where sorcery is common, as someone was riding a donkey and wearing shoes while passing over spilled water and his shoes shrank and his feet shriveled. There are also 3 things you shouldn't pass between: dogs, palm trees, and women. Some say pigs or snakes also. There are points on this, and it says that if 2 women are sitting by a fork in the road facing each other, they're doing sorcery, so you should use a different road. And if you can't, you should hold the hand of the person next to you, and if you can't, there's a quote you should say, mentioning a few demons by name so you won't be harmed. There are other concerns mentioned, like sleeping beneath the shade of a single palm tree in a courtyard or beneath the shade of the moon, and similar. There are a bunch of other shades and demons it talks about that are around certain trees and plants. It says the one by caper bushes has no eyes, so by that one it's a viable strategy to just run away. Once it chased after somebody, tripped, grabbed a palm tree, and burst. It says sorb trees were filled with demons. There's the ketev demons, which appear by certain dates, and similar. There's also a few other negative practices mentioned. It says blindness is caused by combing your dry hair. and also drinking wine that drips from a barrel, and putting shoes on while your feet are wet, and also other improper practices which will make you poor, and many, many similar points. There are other concerns: drinking from water from rivers or ponds at night because of the demon Shabriri of blindness, and quotes you can say to get rid of him, and many other points. There are a number of other of these and other harmful practices to be avoided in regards to health practices and similar. There are also other demons mentioned: Agras Bas Machlas, who goes forth by evenings with 18 myriads of angels of destruction which harm people, but they respected the sage Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, who decreed to all demons that they should never pass through populated areas. There's a bunch more miscellaneous advice given for health stuff, business advice, and similar. There are other points saying God loves people who don't get angry, drunk, or insist on their due measure. There are 3 who God does not love: people who say one thing and mean something else, someone who won't testify for his friend, and someone who tries to testify against someone by himself without a second witness. These points are discussed further. There are other points. There are 3 things who hate each other: dogs, roosters, and a certain sect of Persians. Some add harlots, and some say the Torah scholars of Babylon, who would frequently debate each other on just about everything. There are 3 who love each other: converts, slaves, and crows. There are 4 kinds of people who are intolerable: haughty paupers, rich people who deny valid financial claims against them, old people who commit adultery, and a communal leader who imposes himself on everybody for no reason. Some add somebody who remarries a wife he divorced twice. There are many other similar types of teachings brought. New Mishnah. By the first cup of wine, Beis Shammai says you first say the blessing on the sanctity of the day and then on the wine. Beis Hillel says you do the opposite. These opinions are discussed. It says we hold like Beis Hillel, even though obviously, as a heavenly voice said, we always follow Beis Hillel, as either this was ruled before that occurred, or this is like the opinion that says we just don't pay attention to heavenly voices in regards to resolving disputes. New Mishnah. After the first cup of wine, we take a vegetable, which is dipped prior to the later matzah and maror. Afterwards, you have the matzah, maror, bitter herbs, charesas, an apple, nut, and wine dip for the maror, and 2 cooked dishes. Dipping the maror in charesas is not a mitzvah, but others say it is. When the temple stood, they would then eat the paschal offering. The Gemara discusses some of these points in regards to the intent necessary. Some say the cooked dishes could even be cooked beets and rice. Some say fish and an egg. Others say 2 meats, one to commemorate the paschal offering and one to commemorate the chagiga offering. Others say you can have a bone and its broth. It also goes through the blessing said on the karpas, the dipped vegetable, and the maror. There's some additional points on this. There's argument if you can eat the matzah and maror together, as the matzah is a biblical obligation while the maror is rabbinic. We say we eat the matzah separately with a blessing and the maror separately with a blessing, and then the 2 together as a sandwich of a sort in commemoration of the way it was eaten in the temple without a blessing, according to Hillel. There's also points on dipping food in general in regards to ritual purity. Some say that any food dipped in liquid requires you to wash your hands first. There are some additional points. We don't fully dip the maror into the charesas as we want it to remain bitter. There are some additional points in regards to washing before eating some of these foods. It's valid to swallow without chewing matzah, but not maror, as you have to taste the bitterness. If they're swallowed together, you've only fulfilled the matzah obligation. If they're wrapped in bast and swallowed, you've fulfilled neither. We say we put the matzah and maror and charesas before those reciting the Haggadah. We also remove the table so the children will ask questions. A kid once did this, asking why they're removing the table before they're eating, and the sage Rabbah said that you've exempted us from needing to say the Manishtana, the 4 questions asked by kids at the Passover Seder. Matzah is called lechem oni, bread of affliction, some say as we declare onion things on it. We bring verses as support. Charesas isn't a mitzvah, but it's put on the maror to nullify any potentially dangerous sap on the lettuce, which can make you sick. The ones who say it is a mitzvah, it's either eaten as commemoration of the apple trees that the Jewish women in Egypt gave birth beneath, or as the clay that the Jewish people used to build buildings in Egypt. So we fulfill both by using apples and making it thick, like clay. We bring proofs. New Mishnah. The second cup of wine is then poured, and the son asks questions. If he can't, the father teaches him to ask the Manishtana, the 4 questions. Why is this night different from all other nights? On other nights we eat chametz and matzah, now we eat just matzah. On all the other nights of the year, we eat any greens, now we're just eating maror, bitter herbs. On all the other nights, we eat all types of cooked meats, now we eat just roasted meat. On all the other nights, we dip any vegetables once, now we do it twice. And the father answers by teaching him about the Exodus and the disgraceful start and the good end, and expounds on the verse, the Aramean sought to destroy my father. Nowadays, we swap the question about the type of meat to why we recline now. The Gemara says, if the son isn't smart enough to ask, his wife asks, and if she doesn't, he asks himself. Even if two Torah scholars who know all of these laws still ask each other. Some change the question to, on all the other nights we don't even dip our vegetables once, and now we dip twice. We say our disgraceful start, our ancestors were idol worshippers. Others say we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. There are related points. New Mishnah. Rabbi Gamliel said, if you don't say about the Paschal offering, the matzah and the maror by this Seder, you have not fulfilled your obligation. The verses for this are cited. Also, in every generation, a person is obligated to view himself as if he personally left Egypt, as the verse says, and you shall tell your son on that day, saying, it is because of this that Hashem acted on my behalf when I left Egypt. Therefore, we are obligated to thank, praise, laud, glorify, exalt, honor, bless, extol, and acclaim God who did these miracles and brought us out of slavery to freedom. We say the Hallel prayer. There is argument as to how much, and after we say blessings about the redemption and Mashiach's coming, which are listed. The Gemara says we lift up the matzah and the maror when we mention them, but not the meat, so it doesn't look like we're eating consecrated meat outside the temple. There's debate if a blind person needs to say the Haggadah. The verses are discussed, and it argues over who wrote the Hallel prayer and discusses several praises from Tehillim and related verses. There's also a point on the benefit of joy, and more discussion as to who wrote the Hallel prayer. There are a number of other blessings discussed. New Mishnah. The third cup of wine is then poured. He says an after blessing, and they then pour the fourth cup, and you say the Hallel prayer and the blessing of the song. You can drink between cups of wine, besides for in between the third and fourth cup. The Gemara rejects the implication from this that the after blessing by food requires a cup of wine, as this was instituted as a mitzvah. The blessing of the song is defined. There are a number of other verses discussed that are said, which are expounded on, and the saying of the Hallel prayer. It also says how when Nebuchadnezzar tossed Hananiah, Michael, and Azariah into a furnace, different specific angels argued which one of them should save him, and God told Gabriel to do it. These verses are debated along with expansion on a number of verses from the Hallel prayer. There are verses explained about the Exodus, how the great wealth of the Jewish people leaving Egypt was passed down people to people until the Romans got it. It also says that there were 3 fortunes hid by Yosef. One was given to Korach, one to Antoninus, Marcus Aurelius, a good friend of the sage Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, and one is stored for the righteous when Mashiach comes. There are some further verses discussed. New Mishnah. You don't eat anything further after finishing the Seder meal with the Paschal offering and concluding with the Afikomen. The Gemara says some say this means that you don't join another group, others say it means you don't eat types of desserts. There's debate if the rule that you don't eat anything after the Afikomen, a specific piece of matzah that acts as a dessert, if it still applies. This is debated further along with support that there is still a biblical obligation to eat matzah on the first night of Passover. New Mishnah. If people while eating the Paschal offering fell asleep, they can continue eating when they wake up. If everybody in the group fell asleep, then they can't continue to eat when they wake. Some say that if they only dozed off, they can continue when they wake up, but not if they fell into a deep sleep. After midnight, the Paschal offering contaminates you with impurity, as does pigul, rejected offerings, or nosar, leftover offerings. The Gemara defines dozing and a deep sleep. The remaining points are qualified. This is discussed further. New Mishnah. If you say the blessing over the Paschal offering, you're exempt from saying the blessing of the Chagiga offering. This doesn't apply vice versa. Others say that neither exempts the other one. The Gemara explains that the basis for this dispute is if the throwing of the blood of the sacrifice on the walls of the altar is included in pouring the blood on the wall, but not vice versa. One sage, Rabbi Simlai, attended the redemption of the firstborn son and was asked based on a verse if the Kohen or the father of the son says the blessing. He says, and we rule, that the father of the son says both blessings. That's the end of chapter 10 and the end of Tractate Pesachim.